Hi, and welcome to the End of Life Journey and Beyond, the Sands of Time. My name is Lisa Strahs-Lorenc, and I'm a bereavement specialist. Hi, Susan. Welcome today.
Hi, Lisa. Hi, Lisa. Hi, Frank. Thank you very much for joining us today. My name is Susan Capurso. I'm an end-of-life doula and legacy specialist. And I'm really excited for the conversation today, right? This will be helpful to many people.
So I'd like to introduce Frank. This is a great conversation and something that we haven't explored yet. So Frank Dew, at your service, and founder of Adversity Consultants and a certified business coach with Focal Point International. Frank has lived the challenges of adversity while running businesses, and that's our discussion today, before someone dies and afterwards, and the business ramifications. So we welcome you, Frank, and thanks so much for the opportunity to discuss this topic.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I think it's a really important message to get out. And like you said before, it's one of those things that it's either, it's in both situations, preparing prior to the death of anybody in a business, maybe a partner, a business owner, or a spouse that runs a business, or a friend, close friend, either situation. And sort of the adversity that people face as it happens. And so that's sort of back to why I named my consulting company Adversity Consultants, because I have run into a lot of adversity in my life, and one of the things that it started off a long time ago, when I was about 10 actually, is my grandfather ran his own business, and my father ran his own business, two different businesses. My grandfather passed away fairly quickly when he was 70. And then my father was left running his business and picking up the pieces of running his father's business. And so at an early age, I saw what it did to the family, what it did to the stress of my father, who had to sort of pick up the pieces and figure it all out. And so, just grieving through the death of a family member, be it in any regard, is a hard thing to do, as both you talk about on a regular basis. And one of the things that I look at is, if you're a family member of a business owner that has died, or a partner, whatever the case is, it's a worthwhile conversation to have before that happens, if that's possible. And if we haven't had the opportunity to sort of get our affairs in order, then definitely when it happens, it's also important. One of the biggest things that I noticed over the years of running into this situation is that, first off, the survivor is not alone. And so, it's very, very important to be able to reach out to your coworkers, your family, your friends, your trusted advisors, and it's one of those times that you feel a lot of different feelings, as I'm sure you both sort of discussed in length: fear, anger, loss, sadness, sometimes defeat. And one of the things that comes up with, certainly as it applies to running a business, is anger is one of the things that we tend to not think that we're allowed to feel when there's a passing of somebody close, that let's take the situation that somebody has been running a business and just dies without having any great amount of their affairs in order. And let's say their spouse has to step in and figure out what to do, because the business lives on beyond the life of the business owner that dies. And so that brings up a whole lot of different aspects of circumstances, consequences. There's so many different things that we get into. So, for example, what about the customers? There's a lot of people that rely on the business to, maybe it's for food, maybe it's for whatever service product that it is that business or provides rather. And also the suppliers. Somebody has to deal with the suppliers and figure out where that relationship stands, and how, if the business is going to carry on, and how it's going to carry on. And the creditors, the banks, the institutions that have the lines of credit, when many times when there's a business owner that has, good credit and has credit extended to them, when that person dies, whoever takes over the business may not have that same credit extended to them. So that can cause closure of the business, that in itself. And so there's many different aspects of that. And also definitely the employees and how the employees can handle, death is well, as I'm sure you both have gone through many times, it's one of those things that, it can catch you by such a surprise that, even if you think you are prepared for it, if it's sort of a long drawn out illness and then somebody passes, or if it's a sudden thing, either way, to be able to sort of process all those feelings and then show up in a business and continue to have it operate is a real challenge. And, it affects not just the employees, but the families of the employees. And, you just think, for an example, you have maybe a small business that has 10 employees. And on average, maybe there's, 4 people in each family. So there's 40 people that is affected right off the top. And so, it's so important to be able to prepare and be ready for that eventuality. So when that happens, one of the things that I always recommend people do is, first off, there's some potentially time-sensitive decisions you have to make in regards to those 4 key areas. Ongoing business operations with the customers, suppliers, creditors, and employees. And so when you have to make those time-sensitive decisions, try to lean on the people that work in the business and the suppliers. Everybody will be there to help. And so even if you yourself as the survivor don't really know what it is that you need to do, lean on those other people and also lean outside the business to other trusted advisors. Maybe, a friend of your spouse also ran a business, for an example. Lean on that person for a little bit of advice. But one of the biggest things that I see, and I'm sure both Susan and Lisa, you've seen a lot, is generally just try not to make any quick decisions if you don't have to. Because when it comes to, being in an emotional state and having clarity, they don't usually go hand in hand. So it's one of those things that I find that a lot of cases, most things that you have to consider can wait. And so that's one of the biggest points of advice that I really generally give for that. Lisa, have you had that situation happen with you?
Yeah, I was working for a mental health center and my father died suddenly on vacation of a heart attack. It was 1984. And I gave my employers, now they're mental health center people, okay? So I gave them 6 months notice and told them that I was going to start my own business. I think they thought that it was just a temporary thing and that I was going to change my mind. So I would remind them every month that I was going to leave and that I would train whoever, to replace me. And this was May, and I gave 6 months notice to December. In September, I said to them, I just want to remind you that I'm leaving. And they said, well, you sure? And I said, yeah, I am sure. And I made this decision then, and I'm making the same decision. So I reminded them again, these are social workers, psychologists, people who are in the know. And I kept reminding them till December where I trained 3 people to replace me on one job. And I did do it. But I do understand that some people would think that it was just a, quick decision. It was not. It was something that I had been putting off for some time, but my father's death just, cycled quickly for it.
Exactly.
Yeah. And by the way, when you were talking, my grandfather owned a business for many, many years. He had Parkinson's disease. So I don't know what kind of preparation he did for his sons. They all took it over. None of them were business people. None of them. And they drove the business into the ground.
Yeah.
And it certainly wasn't what my grandfather had. So I don't know what he did or what he didn't do for them, but it reminded me of that when you were talking about your grandfather as well. So are there certain preparations that people should put in place, especially if they find out that somebody is, has limited, time left?
A terminal diagnosis,
Yeah.
And before we go there though, Frank, I just want to say that the whole time you were speaking, you said these couple of words at the beginning and it kept resonating with me, to pick up the pieces. And, the topics that Lisa and I talk about are picking up the pieces for certain things that are happening in the home, and your bills and the relationships and the mourning and the grieving afterwards. And what do we do? Organizing and cleaning out the room. And, but this topic here that you're talking about is not only picking up your personal pieces, it's picking up professional pieces that maybe weren't planned for. And that
Definitely.
in itself is a whole other overwhelming arm, to the story. It's a whole separate thing. This topic is really, really important to have some things in place. Lisa and I talk about pre-planning all the time. So in this case, with any type of business, that same pre-planning has to be done. I mean,
No
I'm sure you
question.
would agree.
Yeah. And when we have the opportunity to do some pre-planning, it's our responsibility as business owners to do so. Now, not everybody thinks that way, and not everybody, sometimes, a lot of times people are really, they feel they're too busy to do that. But, you have just to step back a little bit, most of the business owners that I know run their business out of a place of love for their own family. And every time they, it's not easy to run your own business, and you're always going the extra mile and working harder than you ever would work for anybody else. And usually, in a lot of cases, definitely, people are doing it for their families. And so to then not prepare properly for the eventuality of dying and leaving this mess behind is it's just your responsibility to do that. And every year you have to file your taxes. And I step back again, like if you want to drive a car, you need car insurance. You won't be able to put the car on the road without car insurance. So what do? We get car insurance because we have to. But pre-planning for the death of a business owner is not something that people have to do, but it's something people definitely should do, because there's so many opportunities to have the business carry on the way you want it to, reduce the amount of stress, and expedite the grieving process, really, for those that are left behind. Because the anxiety and stress that can be caused by trying to pick up these pieces when somebody dies can be very overwhelming. And in many cases, a lot of business owners are sort of one-person shows. So yes, they might have employees, but so much of what happens in the business is just in their head. And so what happens when their head's gone? It's not an easy thing to be able to pick up and carry on. So there's so many different things. So just for an example, like, and I know you've talked about it, but wills, healthcare directives, powers of attorney, but also specifically to a business. If you're an incorporated business, a shareholders agreement. The shareholders agreement applies to not just when you want to sell the business, but also when somebody dies that owns the business. If you have partners, what happens? But you can also have that part of your will as well, for what happens to the business and who will take it over, and how will that actually happen. And so you can make all those plans prior to this whole event even coming about. And there's huge tax planning situations around preparing properly for that as well. And so, without going down that road, it's just so important to be able to lean on your advisors to see what it is that is available for you and in your situation, because every situation is different. Every business is different. And what might happen is a perfect example. A number of years back, I had a client who was a farmer, and this farmer, farming is a really hard business, and not that any business is easy, but farming is a super hard business. And this particular farmer had his daughter was working in the business, and his son was a doctor. He worked outside the business, and so one day he just died suddenly. And so he didn't really have it set up to be able to pass on sort of all the shares of the farm went to the daughter, and no value went to the son. Now the son didn't need any of the money because he was fine, but equal and fair are completely two different things. And what happened in this situation, because he hadn't prepared for that, it drove a bit of a wedge between the son and the daughter. And so, you don't want the death of a business owner to be the cause of a family breakup. Like, it's just so avoidable. And, whereas in this case, once they sort of decided over a period of time that, this is what the father really wanted to have happen, then, the two siblings sort of reconciled and got on with their lives and get along well now. But the whole thing lasted years. And if the business owner had been able to, put that in place first, and on top of that, communicate it to the people that meant something to them, so it wasn't a surprise to anybody in the family, huge difference.
Right. And I can also see, Frank, that by designating somebody to maybe be in charge of these certain nuances so that there isn't any sibling rivalry or miscommunication, or, and then honesty, right, is the big
Exactly.
factor. That I got Joe to take care of things and put things into place. Should I go, you'll each get half of whatever, but Joe will take care of all the things so that there's no, I think it'll just, like you said, there won't be any sibling rivalry and
Exactly.
less chance of heartache between siblings. And we've all seen it where people don't talk because of things and relationships end. And so it's really good to just have a little bit of a plan in place, just like you're saying.
And it's interesting that this is the sands of time, because one of the things that I know to be true is that, an older gentleman told me a few years back when I was going through some problems, he said, "This too shall pass." And so everything shall pass, the time will pass. And, the hurt and the grieving will pass or subside somewhat over time. How much time is completely individual, but there's just so many things that we need to do to have those hard discussions within a family, have the hard discussions with the trusted advisors. And just another example, again, to bring up, is I was talking to somebody, I was at a conference in New Orleans last week, 2 weeks ago. And I was talking to a gentleman who was also a coach, and he was telling me about a situation where he had one of his best clients, who was actually a longtime friend, ran a business, and his wife was the controller, the accountant for the business. And so she had breast cancer and died relatively short period of time from the time that she was diagnosed. And so, here's this person that relied on his life partner to help run the business and, to live, hopefully for a long time together as soulmates, and then she was just gone. And so for the longest time, he couldn't go to work because it was another reminder. But yet, as it applies to the business, how could the business carry on? And so, the business owner in this case relied on the coach that I had talked to, and he had actually helped facilitate a management team to run the business long enough to just sort of tread water, make things sort of move along well enough that it bought the business owner enough time to decide what he wanted to do. And so in this case, the business owner decided, yes, he'd finish off what his plan was, but he only had a few years before retirement anyway. So he and his wife were planning on selling the business. So the succession plan just started a little bit faster. But there was still value there because he had the ability to bring another person in to help sort of run the business while he was figuring out his life. And, you know, it's a real, it's one thing to talk about it, as I'm sure you both know, but it's another thing to actually deal with it. And, you know, when you can't get past your own shadow because, you know, just so many feelings and desperation and fear and anxiety going through you, it's really so hard to then pick yourself up enough to run a business. And then even if you're there, you might not, maybe it's not a good idea to be there because you might be making decisions that are not the best because chances are your clarity is not really there. So just another example of why, you know, you really can't try to go it alone. And there's so many people that are counting on you. So those people that are counting on you, you can also lean on them. And so, and I'm going to be sort of a little traditional here as well and say in many, many cases, you know, a business owner is likely to not be a good person to ask for help because they tend to be people that are do-it-yourselfers that have a lot of sort of, you know, the personality that they can handle everything on their own. And so, you know, that's it.
But the problem is you can't, go ahead, I'm sorry, Frank.
No, go ahead.
The problem with that, though, is that would be the first person you'd think of asking, somebody with business experience. Because if you don't, you want to ask your next door neighbor, Jane, who has no business experience. You might not get too far either. There's a fine line there, you know. So, but I wanted to mention that, you know, so we talked a little bit about the pre-planning and having some things in place so that the person who actually has a diagnosis has the capability to start setting things into place before they go, if they know early enough. But what would you suggest, Frank, in a situation that is a tragic loss? A tragic loss, somebody died in a car accident, and oh my gosh, now what?
Yeah, the first suggestion really is to try to designate somebody close to you, probably that's in the business that the business owner trusted, that can take the reins for a period of time, even just for a week or two, so you can gather yourself enough to sort of then bring in other trusted people in your life, but just again to step back and try to make as few decisions as possible, and also to have. It's interesting, later tonight we're going to have a talk about gatekeepers, but it's also worthwhile to have a gatekeeper to protect yourself from the people that are supposedly want something from you when you're not capable of giving it. So for an example, if your spouse had died and the spouse was running the business, maybe somebody at an inopportune time comes and offers you money for the business. Well, I'll take it over. Well, you can't make a decision like that. Not now. Like it takes a while before you make those types of decisions. So just as an example.
Yeah.
So one of the, sorry, I'm just going to say one of the other things that's, I think, super important to be aware of when you go through this whole process is definitely sort of attached to the no quick decisions is to sort of be aware of your own emotional triggers, and you know what is it that you know sets you off, and what is it that you can handle. And a lot of times, as you both know, going through grief, if you can actually have a bit of a purpose and do something, it can help you process that grief. So I'm not saying you don't have to do anything, but just be very aware of who you are and what suits you individually. And it's always good to have a journal, keep a journal and write down things that come into your mind, and then also bounce those ideas off of the trusted advisors in your life, and work through it one step at a time.
So my partner had worked with somebody, he's in a printing business, which is not a great trade business anymore, but
Yes.
he was with somebody who did a very specialized part of that business. I guess it was like the engraving part of it. And he worked his own machine, and even though he wasn't like in the same business, they sat next to each other and they would collaborate and all. So he sort of was on his own. So he was in the hospital, and when he died, it's like there's nobody that knows that machine, and nobody who knows all the clients that he dealt with either. So my partner, consulted with the grandchildren who knew a little bit about the business, but not a lot, and consulted with other people, in that area, and tried to do whatever he could, but it was really difficult picking up the pieces and to find somebody else who he could train on that machine, take over, because the clients were calling up, asking him, for some of that work. So it was
Exactly.
a really difficult situation. As I said, he was by himself, and hadn't really made any plans to figure out what to do with this, and it becomes a real challenge.
And when you have a terminal illness, like Susan's mentioned, and you do have a little bit of time to be able to create an exit strategy, that's when you can identify, is there somebody in the business that works with you that you would like to be able to carry the business on with? Is there a sibling or a son or a daughter that you want to have that works in the business a little bit, and you want to be able to move them into the ownership role? And what types of responsibilities can they handle now? And what kind of training and coaching can they have to be able to handle that transition? And I find people are a lot more resilient than they think they are. So
They are, we know that.
yeah, totally. And one of the things that is a great opportunity is, while you have that ability, sure, there's the paperwork of, the will and the healthcare directive and shareholders agreement, all that is important, but also is the communication with the people that you want to carry on the business for you if something ever happened. And so, even way prior, before terminally ill, it doesn't have to be, and it shouldn't be, it should be one of the top things that you do when you get into business is what do I want to do with this business? Where is it going to go? What are my plans for it? And it's just one of the responsibilities you have to your family, yourself. Also gives you a much better opportunity to sleep well at night, but also the employees that rely on paychecks for working for you, and to have some sort of an exit strategy. So it might be, like Susan, you mentioned, a car accident, and you can't plan for that. So all you can do is do your best while you have the ability to do it. And
Exactly.
exactly.
And I have to say, not that we're not ending yet, but I just had to bring this up because I'm jumping out of my seat, Frank. So so first of all, Lisa, I loved that example of his partner, because there are so many businesses that are small businesses, and maybe it's one person or two people or three people, but nobody knows each other's roles. So it's always important to maybe have a backup or go-to that you can go to should something happen and they're in the hospital for the next month or two, and you can plan for that. You don't think about it while the everyday is occurring. But I'm jumping out of my seat because I want to know more about your role, Frank. Now, whether it's somebody, a person who wants to develop that exit strategy and have plans in place, or whether it's somebody that just lost their spouse suddenly or nothing was planned for, and what do I do next, and what are the steps? Is this a role that you can regularly take with a client and help them through their process?
Yeah, definitely. One of the I guess I start off with the conversation with people, and it could be the business owner themselves, or like you say, somebody that is left grieving for somebody that was running the business. And so, that is the main purpose for me, to be able to help these people and provide some clarity. And in many cases, that part of those discussions start to identify the ability to outsource other professionals to be able to come in and help either the person carry on the business or make the decisions of what to do with it. It's not a one-time session. It's over a period of time situation that, we try to first start off with a foundation of clarity as to, where you stand, what do you want, what are the needs, and then, to list a bunch of options of different directions that you can go with it, and who might be interested, and just take it one step at a time. But one of the things that I've noticed over time is coaching people through that is, as time progresses and you take it slowly, that your own clarity sort of starts to come out, not just through the process that we take you through, but also as the grieving process moves forward. And so, like I said, my grandfather died when I was 10. Well, that was a long time ago. So I'm okay from that. Whereas if it was last month, I'm not operating on a normal basis. So, just through that period of time, sometimes it's 3 months, 6 months, a year, any of those periods of time, we just try to coach people through that and try to bring to the table the resources that they need in each individual situation. So, yeah.
I want to back up. Adversity consultants. So how'd you come to that? It's just different.
Well, it's kind of a personal situation, but basically there was a lot of illness in my family, and I was running businesses through that. And as I did that, I was the one that, was a caregiver in that situation. And so I didn't do a very good job of taking care of myself. I tried to do what I could for the business and what I could at home. And so ultimately, that put me in a position where I wasn't making the decisions that I should be making and not living a healthy life. And so then, having come through all that situation, now I know so much more that I can be able to give and be able to help people sidestep or shorten that whole period of time. And when you're a caregiver, it's the day-to-day stress really accumulates, and it really starts to muddy your thinking, and also when you don't take care of yourself on top of it, then your energy to be able to handle what you'd normally be able to handle in a regular situation starts to deplete big time. So being able to bring that experience to the table, especially when it comes to passing of a business owner or somebody that was in the business. Even for that matter, I don't think we really touched on it much, but if you own a business and somebody close to you dies, well, still you have to keeping on somehow. And so that in itself is a whole other situation. But the whole grieving process, whoever happens to pass, as it relates to running a business, my biggest takeaway that I hope people get really is to lean on people that they trust, and try not to take too many quick decisions, and just kind of gather themselves and try to get as much clarity as possible.
So the planning and the communication and all, most important, right?
And it's hard. The communication is hard because you have so many emotions. You might not even be able to communicate what it is that you're feeling, but people are patient and have kind, patient people around you, and it'll work out.
Yeah, that's such great advice, Frank.
Yes.
Really, really, it's important to know, like, and trust the person, but know that they have common sense, even if it's not experience in what the business is about, and what
Exactly.
it stands for. if they're a smart, conscientious, honest, knowledgeable, intelligent person, you know that they can at least help guide you and figure out the steps to take to further you along.
Exactly.
So
exactly.
important.
But, again, prior to any of that, plan. Because, it happens to us all. We're all gonna, pass at some point. So,
Of course.
we don't know when, but
Yep.
when you run a business, there's so many opportunities for you to plan for, good things and bad things. So might as well do it, and it'll save your employees, your family, so much grief. It's your responsibility to do so, for sure.
Frank, can you share your contact information, and you have a website as well?
Yeah, just probably the easiest website is adversityconsultants.com, and then probably the easiest email is info@adversityconsultants.com.
Okay, want to give us the phone number as well?
Yeah, 902-900-9797.
Okay, do it again for us. Go ahead.
902-900-9797.
Great. Now, this is a really specialized area that we don't really, go into, and yet it's part of life and death. And people need to plan. People need to think about this.
Yeah, and today's talk, I really appreciate you having me on. One of the things that I really noticed, though, is just to increase the awareness of it. The action comes when there's more awareness. So I appreciate the opportunity to increase that awareness.
Absolutely. That's our job. We talk about everything, and this has really been an important topic, Frank.
I appreciate you having me.
Thank you so much. And in our spare time, we do a few other things. Susan, you want to share some of the information that you have about your work?
Sure. Well, thank you, Lisa. And thank you. Absolutely. Thank you, Frank. Wow, this was such valuable information. You can go to eastenddoulacare.com and learn more about the services that I provide as an end-of-life doula. I offer a legacy project for both terminally ill patients as well as healthy and vibrant baby boomers. I have a few clients now that do not have a terminal diagnosis. It's a 4-week project. We get together and do at least 2 hours of audio each visit, and I turn it into a hardcover book with text and photos, and it's a beautiful thing. It's a book that you can leave for generations to come, all about your life and stories. And I'm the new creator of the Healing Garden. You can go to thehealinggardenbowl.com, or on my website up there, you'll find the page. And it's a meditative healing therapeutic tool to help you sit and be still and breathe. And it's stones, Long Island stones in a bowl that you hold on to a couple minutes in the morning, a few minutes at night, and it will help you flow and find some more peace and calm in your life. So thank you,
Great work,
Lisa.
Susan.
Tell us about you.
Sure. So I'm a bereavement specialist. I've undergone a lot of deaths in my life. I always say that death is a part of life. People ought to realize that and accept that. So I've done 2 support books for pancreatic cancer, and the money goes to the Les Garten Foundation on behalf of my husband, who died of this disease 13 years ago. And I also love helping people journey on. And though you always remember those we love, they want us to carry on with our lives. That is my philosophy every day in my life. So I do individual one-to-one, and I also do support groups, and I love helping people actualize their lives and find their next journey. So that's what I do.
And don't forget about how we do believe that life should be a celebration, especially at the end of life, and how it's more beautiful to even celebrate your life when you're still here.
That's right.
So whether you're here or gone, for the family afterwards, Lisa and I help plan your end of life celebration.
Yes, good work. Thank you so much, Frank, for today. We really enjoyed it. Great information and really helpful to everyone. We appreciate it.
You're most welcome, and thanks for having me.
Our pleasure.
Yeah,
And,
appreciate you, Frank. And if anybody needs more information about Frank, please reach out to Lisa and I, and we'll send you his way.
Sounds
Perfect.
great. Have a good day, everyone. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.